Hello, and I want to welcome you to a discussion on dividing polynomials. From this first slide you can see that a over c plus b over c can be reduced to the fraction of a plus b over c. And remember, we want the denominator to be equal to anything besides 0 so that we have anything that is not an undefined fraction. So if we start looking at some examples, we're going to start looking at dividing by a monomial. That means there is one term. There is nothing being added or subtracted, there's just one term. Okay, so to start off, we have 6m squared plus 2m as one quantity, and we want to divide it by 2m. So to do that, we want to use long division. That's something you learned way back in elementary school, but we can still apply it in this level of math here. So you can either write it as, in long division, 2m, and then you have your bracket with 6m squared plus 2m inside. That's one way of writing it. Another way, which might make things a bit more simpler, is just to rewrite the first part, 6m squared plus 2m, write a division bar, or like a fraction bar, and write 2m. Okay, so that can be broken down further into 6m squared over 2m. We'll use our operation, which is plus, to link the next part, which is 2m from the top over 2m. Okay, so looking at this first piece, 6m squared over 2m, 6 divided by 2 is going to leave you with 3. Using our rule of exponents, we have the larger number on top, so we can just subtract, knowing that that's m with a power of 1 on the bottom, so that's 2 minus 1, or just m to the first power, or just m. Then finally we have 2m over 2m, that's just another way to write 1. And that is the answer to that problem. Okay, looking at number 2 for dividing by a monomial, let's break this down. We have 9x to the 5th minus 12x squared plus 3x over 3x squared. So let's take and have the first part, 9x to the 5th over our fraction of 3x squared. Our operation is subtract, so we have 12x squared over our denominator of 3x squared. And then our operation of plus, let's write the last piece of 3x divided by 3x squared. So let's go ahead and do our simplification of 9 over 3 is going to leave you with 3. And then we can just have our x, and now we have our exponents of 5 on top and then 2 on the bottom, so we subtract and we get 3. So that's power of 3, or just cubed. Okay, next we're going to have a subtract, because that's a subtraction over a positive, so we just keep our subtraction. So we have 12 over 3, or it's going to leave us with 4. And x squared over x squared is just going to cancel out, leaving you with just the 4. And finally, we're going to have plus, and then 3x over the x squared. The 3's are going to cancel out, so on top we're going to have just a 1 as a placeholder. And now looking at our variables, that's a power of 1 on top and a power of 2 on bottom. When we subtract, we're going to get 1. And we put the x where the larger exponent lies, so it goes on the bottom. So this is the solution to that division problem. Okay, now let's take a look at dividing by binomials and polynomials. That means there's going to be more than one term. As before, where we just had something divided by 2m or 3x squared, this is going to have an operation adding something else. A bit more complex, but we can use our principles, and we should be able to work this just fine. Okay, so first we're going to work with the x squared plus 7x plus 2 divided by x plus 3. Notice x plus 3 is out in front of the bracket. So we want this variable to match what appears here. So we have just a plain x, we want it to be an x squared, so we're just going to multiply x. So that means we're going to take our expression of x plus 3 and multiply it by the x. So x times x is x squared, and then 3 times x will just give you 3x. Okay, so once you've got that, I like to put it in parentheses. Okay, now I like to change the signs, because because we want the x squared and the x squared here to cancel out. To do that, to have opposite signs. So x squared minus x squared leaves you with nothing. Then we have 7x minus 3x, leaving you with just 4x. Okay, now what we want to do is pull down this plus 12, like you would do with long division in grade school. So now we want to have this x right here match this x right here. So the idea is to multiply by a positive 4. So in our long division it's going to be an add 4. So we multiply 4 by what we're dividing by. So 4 times x is 4x, plus 3 times 4 is 12. Okay, now write that in parentheses and put a minus out in front, because we want the 4x and 4x to cancel out. So 4x minus 4x gives you nothing. Alright, and then 12 minus the 12 gives you nothing. So there's no remainder. But here is our answer. When we divide out for this one, the solution is x plus 4. Looking at number 5, or number 2 for this problem set, we have 3x minus 1, and it's going to be dividing into the polynomial 6x squared plus 10x minus 5. So for this, what you want to do is say, how do I make this 3x and the 6x squared match? To do that, you're going to have to multiply by 2 and then an additional x. Because when you multiply the 2x and the 3x, it's going to give you the 6x squared, which is what we need. Okay, then you had to take this minus 1 times the 2x, so it's going to be a minus 2x. Now let's go ahead and subtract, because we have parentheses out in front, which would distribute across. So 6x squared minus 6x squared gives you nothing here. So we have 10x minus a negative 2x. So that's really going to give you a positive 12x, because the negative times the negative is positive, so you'd be adding the 10 and the 2. Okay, so now what you need to do is bring down the negative 5. So now we need to make the 3x and the 12x look the same. To do that, we're going to just multiply by a 4. So we're just going to add a 4 up here on top of the division bar. So we take the 4 and distribute it across everything we're dividing by. So 4 times 3x is going to be 12x. Negative 1 times a positive 4 is going to be a minus 4. Now I like to write that in parentheses and have a minus out in front. So 12x minus 12x gives you 0. Then we have a negative 5 minus a negative 4. So that's like negative 5 plus 4, or just negative 1. Okay, we can't take it any further, so negative 1 is our remainder. So you could either say that the solution is 2x plus 4 with remainder negative 1, or you can write the whole solution as 2x plus 4 minus 1, and then you write that over, the remainder, over the piece that you're dividing by. So that would be negative 1 over 3x minus 1. And that's the solution to that problem. And finally, we look at this problem. We have 2 minus 4x squared divided by x plus 1. Now the most important thing to do here is to arrange the polynomials in descending order. So that means you write the largest exponents and then go down to where there is no exponent. So that's really going to be a negative 4x squared. There's no regular x, so I just write 0x as a placeholder plus the positive 2. So that's how we write that. Now let's take what we're dividing by, the x plus 1, divided by what we just wrote, the negative 4x squared plus 0x plus 2. Okay, so now let's make the x and the negative 4x squared match. And to do that, we need to multiply by a negative 4x, because when you multiply the x and the negative 4x, you're going to get the negative 4x squared. So, like we said, negative 4x squared, then we have plus 1 times the negative 4x, leaving you with negative 4x. Let's write that in parentheses like we have been. Let's put our negative out in front. So we subtract these. the negative 4x squared, and then the negative times a negative gives you a positive, so we're really adding. It's going to go to 0. So we have 0x minus a negative 4x. When you simplify that, you're just going to get a positive 4x. Let's go ahead and bring down this positive 2, this plus 2 down. So we need to make this 4, this x, and this 4x the same. So we're just going to multiply by 4, or just add 4 right here at the top of the division mark. So x times 4 is going to be 4x. Then positive 1 times 4 is just going to be 4. Let's write that off in parentheses, put a minus out in front. Now 4x minus 4x is 0. 2 minus a positive 4. It's going to give you a negative 2. So this is the remainder. You could either say the solution is negative 4x plus 4 with a remainder of negative 2, or you can write it as negative 4x plus 4, then write your remainder, negative 2, as a fraction with the numerator being the remainder, and then for the denominator of that, you want to take what you're dividing by, which is the x plus 1 portion. And that will be the solution to that problem.